Shant, welcome to the podcast, man.
Couldn't be happier to be here. I'm excited to get rolling. Thanks for having me.
Listen, it's our pleasure. Like we were just talking about offline, I'm rocking this killer sunglass tan right now. Just dragged me right off the beach down here in Florida. Wouldn't miss this for the world. Got my fresh new Florida mic, and I'm ready to rock today. So,
do you have extra lighting today too?
That's not important, Brendan. I just grabbed this little table lamp from the back because it's a little dark in here. So that's the hack in the podcast world.
Oh, I meant on the front, dude. Your glow, your front is a glow.
I just have the blind open.
Oh,
you know
okay.
I mean? Which now you can see in this mirror that I've pointed.
Ah, so, yeah.
So Shant,
so that's behind you, in front of you. Yeah, I got it.
Well, that's how mirrors work.
Yeah, so I was missing that part, but
in front of me at the same time. So, Shant, we're super excited to have you on today. And usually Brendan kicks us off, but I'm just going to take the helm here a little bit.
Yeah.
And just tell us a little bit about yourself. And I'd love to hear your background on how you ended up in the mortgage business, which has got to be a unique story, right? And from there, we'll just kind of dive right into all the local mortgage stuff. And there's so much happening out there in the world, a lot of noise, right? So we'd love to hear kind of some hot takes from you on kind of what's happening. But just kick us off with your background, if you can.
Yeah, of course. So, how I got into this business is it's pretty wild. So, I graduated from college at Bentley College at the time, which is now Bentley University, in the early 2000s. And I had this great idea that I wanted to be an attorney. So I literally
made the right choice, dude.
Yeah. So I was working my first job out of college as a property manager for a company in Cambridge. I didn't really love it. I kind of hated it, to be honest with you. And so I wanted to become a attorney. It's something I kind of always wanted to do. So I quit my job, started studying for the LSATs, took the LSATs, applied for colleges, got into a couple, and then ultimately, decided on where I was going to go. And I literally ran it. I was, I had to make some money because I quit my job and I was studying. So I was working in a nightclub in Boston as a door guy, and my best friend was working as the bartender. And so we'd work all night. I'd go to the gym during the day, and I was literally in the gym at World Gym in Waltham, and I ran into a buddy of mine from college from Bentley, and he was just telling me he was a loan officer, and he was telling me all about it. And he was like, "You should do it. The housing market's crazy. You can go to school and you can do this part time. You'll make some money, pay for your school, all this kind of stuff." And it sounded appealing.
What year was this?
This is 2000 and late 2002. Because I started with the new company in March of 2023. I'm sorry, 2003. So almost exactly 20 years ago. So anyways, I interviewed with this company and I got hired, and it was in a call center environment. And I loved it right away. Truly, I fell in love with it. I liked doing, it fulfilled a lot of things. I liked doing numbers. I liked helping people. It was truly a great learning environment. And one of the best things that it taught me was it was all phone sales. And if you guys remember, and it's still around, lendingtree.com, they'd sell the lead to 5 or 6, or eventually it turned into 12 different people. And you'd have to really differentiate yourself on the phone almost immediately. And so I learned a lot it was a great place to work, great culture, really great training. I learned a lot about products, learned how to separate myself on the phone. It was a really invaluable experience. And so I loved it. I moved my way up the company, had a lot of success there. And then 2007 happened in 2008. And I literally was literally unemployed 5 years later, overnight, and I didn't have a job. And not only did I not have a job, the entire industry was collapsing around me. Whole companies were shutting down within literally a day's notice. And so for some reason, and all my friends at that time were already kind of working, we're right here outside Boston. So everybody was working at EMC, Oracle, that whole tech industry had kind of really taken off, selling hardware at the time, or software maybe even. But, it was mostly hardware, I feel back then. And so everybody's like, you should get into that. Everybody's doing awesome. And I just decided that I really, I wanted to stay in the mortgage business. So company took a shot on me and let me open up their only office in Massachusetts. I begged them to do it, and they agreed, and they let us open up an office. There was a ton of conditions around what we had to do, and literally every single day we were coming in and trying to figure out who's going out of business next and whether our company was going to survive. and that was like that for a year. Like the entire all of 2008 was like that. And it was like an amazing experience. Like I don't think we made any money the first 6 months of business.
That's just small
That's
business,
most
man.
businesses, right?
We're still not making money.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we are doing a podcast, so.
Yeah. So it's like, it was a wild year, man. It was like, we just tried to survive that year and just like made
I
enough
bet.
money to like eat and like pay our bills. Right. And so we kind of grinded through that first year. And then slowly what happened is like, 2009, we did a little bit more business. And then 2010 happened. And that's when the government kind of rolled out all those stimulus programs around housing, first time home buyer, $7,500 incentives, $8,000. And like the housing market really kind of started to pick up. And every year it got a little bit better and better and better. And then rates came way down. And every year, literally since then, we've done a little bit, we did a little bit more business. And then my business really kind of took off in 2012, 2013. Guaranteed Rate actually acquired the company that I was working for. And that's kind of like when I would say like I kind of became relevant in the mortgage space and here in Massachusetts in the housing market, because like
Wow.
I went from being kind of just like one of those grinders that are just kind of hustling every single day, doing a good little business, to being like, one of the top, really in that year became like the top loan originator in the state and one of the top loan originators in the country. And like, the business kept growing. And here we are, 20 years later. And, I've been the top loan originator in the mortgage business in the entire country for the last 5 years. I've been the top loan originator in Massachusetts and New England for really like the last 10 or 11 years. So it's been
It's
quite a
incredible.
run.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible. The volume numbers. And I know last year was a weird year in general, right? And this year I think we'll be with it. But touch on some of the volume numbers just to put some gravity behind it.
Yeah. So in my career, I've done over $9 billion in mortgages. Last year we did almost $1 billion in closings, even with the challenges we had in the year. The year before we did over $2 billion. The year before that we did almost $2 billion. So like, we're doing a lot of volume.
Wild.
We're doing anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 loans a year. Most of it, I'd say, historically, like 90% of it has been in Massachusetts. We've gotten licensed in all 50 states over the last couple of years. And like what that's allowed us to do is, as our clients move, as our clients have friends and family, as our clients, have a good experience or people find out about us, like it allows us to kind of do loans wherever they are, whether it's a purchase or a refinance. And so we've expanded quite a bit. It was, in other states, but most of our business, like the hub of our business, still originates here in New England. And even most of the out-of-state deals we do or almost always have some sort of tie back to Mass. Now, when you start doing purchase deals in other states and you do a really great job, you might impress like a real estate agent or something, or you catch on with a financial advisor somewhere else. Like as long as you do a great job for the clients, especially with today's technology, like they tend to stay with you. So like we're really, my goal is to be able to do business equally everywhere, but it's always going to be, my network is here. This has been home base for me my entire life. I'm from Watertown. I grew up in I went to college in Waltham. I live in Belmont now. So it's like, this is home base.
I love it. I mean, the volume numbers are absurd, right? And I think what's really cool about it, we talk about you guys a lot when we're talking to clients who are selling. Like I have a client right now who actually gave me a question to ask you, which I look forward to asking you later, who I was on the phone with earlier. He's selling here. He's moving to Dallas. And one of the first things I say, hey, man, Brendan, what are you doing, dude?
I'm sorry.
Smashing things over there.
Yeah.
It's like you had a Rubik's Cube you were smashing on the table. So one of the first
At least
things
my mic's good.
That's true. One of the first things I said to him was like, hey, Dan, great news. I got a loan officer for you. I know you're moving across country, but like the last thing you want to try and do is find the right loan officer in Texas. Am I right? Yeah, of course. Right. He's a sharp dude. And so he's like, that's so awesome. You have someone who can do business across 50 states. So I completely agree with you. Like there's so much transient influx and outflux in real estate locally, especially in Massachusetts, as people hop north and south, snowbirds to Florida, people with lake houses, Maine, the lakes region, all that type of stuff. It's a great option to be licensed in multiple states. The continuing ed got to be a nightmare.
It's not fun. Fortunately, some states, are reciprocal, in the sense that like,
right.
There's, I forget which one it is, but there's one of the tests that gets me like 17 or 18 states. Right. So,
Nice.
but it's not, the first, it took about a year between the initial training, the class hours, all that kind of stuff. So it literally took a year to be able to say it. And like some people are like, well, why do you need to do all 50 states? Because like,
It's so you
you
can
know,
say you can do all 50 states.
100%. And it's
There's
just a
power in
clean
that.
message. It's a
I
clean
agree.
message. Yeah. And frankly, it's like, it's easy to do business everywhere. It's not any more difficult for me to do a business anywhere in the country than it is here. It's like, so unfortunately, I work with a platform like a national lender, like Guaranteed Rate, that is already set up there, so I can piggyback off that.
Love it.
But it's been awesome, and I love it, and it's fun, and it keeps it exciting. But it's been a huge win, and I'm blown away every single day by the deals I get in the most random of places, and it's been cool. And like randomly, like it's funny. Like when I first got my license, I was like, there's some states that I was like, oh, I'll never do business in that state, right?
Arkansas.
Yeah, and like I did a deal in Alaska last year. I did a refinance. My three of my five biggest deals last year were all in Montana. Which
Oh,
of all of my deals, and it's like the weirdest like places, and obviously tons in Florida, tons in California, Texas. Actually is one of our big states. Austin's a big
I bet.
hub. So, anyways, you just never know where it leads to, and this is a people business, so it allows me to stay connected to our people.
Nailed it. I think if the math's right, that's like 11 loans per day if you're doing
It's a
business
lot of
7 days a
loans.
week, right? So
Yeah.
it's probably significantly more than that. So
Yeah.
you got to be pretty proud of it, right?
I am super proud of it. Super proud of my team. Obviously, this isn't like a one person operation. Like I get a lot of the credit and I get a lot of the recognition and rewards and all that stuff. But like really, it's a team effort. And I always try to. It'd be impossible for me to do this kind of scale without surrounding myself with some really amazing people and partners.
I bet. I bet. All right, I'll let Brendan get awarded.
Yeah. So it sounds like when you joined Guaranteed Rate or were acquired by Guaranteed Rate, that was a pivotal moment in
Yep.
your career. So what was it about Guaranteed Rate that made you move from sort of the lone wolf sole producer to team leader extraordinaire, number one mortgage guy in the country?
Yeah.
Probably the
So
world, right?
yeah, I mean, I don't know. There might be somebody in China or somewhere doing more business,
Oh
but I don't
yeah.
know. I'll go with the world for now. I'll
Yeah.
take it.
We'll give
Yeah.
you the world.
Yeah.
We'll
Thank you.
let
I
someone
appreciate
correct
it.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're the world to us.
Yeah.
One of
So
our 36 listeners will
the
catch up on
universe,
that.
the
Yeah.
universe. So the it was huge for me because here's what it did. It opened my eyes up to what was possible, right? Like and like so there was two parts of it. It was truly like the mentality and then the platform itself. So like the mentality piece was like, I thought I was maxed out doing 40 or $50 million a year, and then I got to this company and there was like I was like not even in the top
Nobody.
50, right? And there was people doing like at that 200-300 million, even somebody doing 400 million, and I was like I couldn't even wrap my head around it. But then what was
Yeah.
cool is you surround yourself with like these people, and you get to meet them, and the first thing you realize is they're just like you and me. There's not some like secret sauce. They're just running it smarter than I am, and they're thinking bigger. And um, so that was part of it, is like just being surrounded by that and understanding what was possible. The other part was the platform itself. Like they were running a better business with better products, better programs, better technology, and so it allowed me to really focus on being uh, I went from being a salesperson and a loan officer, right, to a CEO and an owner of my business. And the mentality of those two things are different,
Totally
right?
different.
Like,
Yeah.
and so it changed my mentality. And I really just I focused on running my business, improving my business, being a rainmaker. To me, what that means is like being a relationship person in business development, and then allowing people that are better than me at certain parts of my process to take over and delegate and elevate, right? So like it really kind of like, unfortunately what happens with certain salespeople is like they have this mentality and it's closed minded that like I have to be a control freak, right? I have to do everything. Everybody wants me. And that's not really the case. People just want really great service and they want answers. Our clients just want to be treated like get what they need and what they want, right? And so we think it's always me, but it's like there's people on my team that are way better at certain parts of this job that are going to deliver a way better client experience. So as long as clients are getting a great experience, they don't care if they're talking to you or somebody else on your team. As long as they're, I'm the representation of the brand, but if everybody's kind of delivering on that execution piece and the communication piece, like everybody's happy, you know? So I
Okay.
really, that's where I shifted things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just said so much like great stuff. And we talk about this all the time, right? Like there's so we're both at the stage where we have very small teams, right? And I've made the analogy so many times, like it's like trying to get out of orbit, right? And I'm no space, I'm no astronaut, right? But like it takes a lot of fuel, man,
Yeah.
to burn up out and break orbit. But once you punch, man, you can let the rockets go, right? So like talk to us about that shift and growing your team. What were the crucial hires? And it might benefit us to talk about the org structure, right? Because like I feel a lot of what you just said, and that
Uh,
transitions hard as a
almost every word.
salesperson.
Yeah.
It transitions very hard as a salesperson to be like I was literally on the phone earlier where I have several people taking care of my clients right now, and I was like, hey, just loop me in on that text, loop me in on that email. And the reality is, you're right, the client doesn't care, but I care, and I care because of the service level. But to grow, you got to not care to be in the know sometimes, right? So like talk about that mindset shift, and talk a little bit about the organizational stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, yeah, trust me, it's not a lack of caring, right? It's actually more of like where I was getting, like where I knew
Too
also
much.
what was happening. It was like I was getting frustrated that I couldn't deliver the kind of service that my clients deserved and expected, and that frankly I promised, right? So like, and like, I didn't, and I also frankly would not have been fulfilled being a one person show, right? Like
No.
to me, it's like so it was a little bit of all those things, and so the mindset shift is ultimately like, you have to figure out, I've fortunately, the one thing I got lucky with is like, when I got into this business, and maybe it's not luck, but like I was always a team sports person, right? Like it was always about like, a team is only as good as like the communication and like all the other teammates and all working well together. And so the biggest mindset shift in terms of growing my team is we all focus as business owners and the control freaks is like, how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we do this? And really, it's not about how. It's like finding the right who, instead of the
Dan
how,
Sullivan, Who's Not
right?
House.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of his,
Yeah.
and
Instrumental when I read that book.
yeah, and it's so when you find it, and I didn't know this book, you know, when I went to build
Yeah.
my team 12 years ago because it wasn't even written, but
Yeah.
like it's like exactly what I've done. I've surrounded myself with a bunch of who's. So you know, when it was typically what the biggest mistake that we make in our business is, whether it's real estate, mortgage, whatever, anything, legal, finance, we try to like the natural thought is to replicate ourselves. If I just had another one of me, that would be amazing. And really, I
I
think
feel like
that's a
I'm in
huge mistake.
therapy right now. Like
Yeah, I mean, it's because look, I didn't figure out anything on my own in terms of without making a ton of mistakes. So like I've made every single mistake that's possible out there, and that pain is kind of what's led me to like being motivated to. It's not like I'm not going to pretend like I just had to figure it out. I came in, I was going to do this, and this differently than everybody, and it was going to be easy. Like I hit a ceiling and then busted through it, hit a ceiling, busted through it, and just but it's the reality is that it's not replicating yourself. It is literally hiring. At first, I think it's the opposite of yourself, right? And finding and being okay from an ego standpoint of like, first, I think when you're first getting going, I think what's really important is surrounding people with you that are going to not just take work off your plate, that are going to support you, right? Allow you to focus on what you're great at, what your superpowers are, what your skills are, and theirs aren't, right? Like, you want, like, I personally believe the first kind of hires are administrative and operational type support, so you can
for
maximize
sure.
your efforts, and deliver a great client experience. But so I think that's what I did at first is like surrounded myself with people that could kind of allow me to be the best version of myself and build my business and take stuff off my plate that I didn't really need to be doing. But then it's like,
Oh,
then I made some big hires. Like I took a chance and I hired somebody that was going to take over operations for me altogether, remove me from the process of the loans, and do a way better job and know way more than I even knew. The stuff that I was controlling, like she knew immediately way more and how to structure it and format it and do all that stuff, and take me out of that. And that was one of my first big hires, hiring a head of sales. That helps implement training and coaching and mentoring, right? Hiring a head of business development that allowed me to not have to be out of the office all the time, but also keep my partners and clients like really happy and supported. Hiring a marketing
Is that
person.
Johnny?
Johnny's running business development. He was actually, there was somebody else before him as well, and then we actually hired Johnny. Like, we were like his first real job after he graduated from school, and like to see his growth. And he's tried a couple different things
It's
here,
got to
and
be
like
cool.
on the sales side, it's been amazing. Like it's been amazing to watch. Um, Hired a head of marketing. So all these are like, we went from being like, I went from being a salesperson to like truly like a business owner, and
Yeah.
running a business that's like scalable. And all these people know way more about their parts of their business than I do, right? Like, because they're subject matter experts and they're focused on their parts. So now I'm not just a salesperson. I've got marketing, branding, business development, client retention, operations, all these different parts of the business. And it's like, so how does a loan officer that's like a one person show compete with that? Right. Like
I
it's
know.
like,
Yeah.
they can try, right. But like, they're going to have to work literally 24/7 and they're going to burn out. Right. Whereas like,
Well, they're going to have
Well,
a
and you get
ceiling.
yeah,
and you get to this race to the bottom where they start
Yeah.
to cut comp and do anything to save the deal from going to elsewhere, right?
yeah.
And
So,
a company that's already working on razor type margins, they can't compete. I think is the answer.
yeah, and so like that's what it's like, again, I don't have it all figured out. I'm never going to pretend like I do, but like I'm constantly trying to figure it out, right? And then the market shifts, right? And you've got to shift with the market, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got like we've had so many different shifts, like, and I've come to the realization that like now, like the market's going to shift every year, right? And every single one of them, every shift is going to be hard. Like I look back at 2020 and 2021, and we did like insane volume, right? Like insane. Like we did $4 billion between those 2 years. It was
Crazy.
so hard. It looked, now I remember it. I'm like, I wish I could go back to that. But like doing 2020 was like as hard as it could possibly, and stressful, like way more stressful than even last year was, even though we did half the volume last year. And it was just a
Yeah.
different kind of stress.
Yeah.
But like, how hard it is, like, when all of a sudden, like, you said 7 loans a day or 11 loans a day. Like in 2020, there was days where we were taking 30 loans a
30,
day on,
40. Yeah.
and we were staffed to take on 10. And like the frustration of like not being able to kind of like keep up with it at first, and then you're trying to hire ahead of it, like it's hard. So it was hard. Every year's gonna be hard. Next year's gonna be hard for different reasons, but like, I enjoy it. It's fun. I try to keep, I've worked really, really hard and kind of like taking care of myself to make sure that like the best version of me shows up every single day, where like I'm ready, prepared to lead, to work, and to have the right kind of energy and vibe and all that kind of stuff, because that's what keeps me focused, and keep the thing moving every single day.
So one of the things that Seth and I have talked a lot about, both on the podcast and off, is sort of that first hire and like how pivotal that was for us, at least for me, right? Like breaking that seal, being like, all right, I can afford this, I can do it. It was scary as hell. I tried not to do it for years. And then I did it. Now I'm like, every chance I get, I'm like, well, we should probably hire somebody to,
Yeah,
just add a new role here, or maybe we need to have another position that we don't currently have. So can you talk a little bit about like overcoming that fear, how you knew you needed to do it, and what pushed you to make that scary decision as a business owner to do that first hire?
yeah, great question.
Great
So I
question.
remember this because it was scary for me, and that was something that held me back for a little bit, because like, keep in mind, my entire world and my business was taken away from me like overnight. Like the whole industry collapsed around me, and like,
Mm-hmm.
so that was always in the back of my mind. Is like, look, you've got to keep expenses low, because like you need to be able to stay
Gotta
lean.
stay
And so like
nimble.
that was like a
Because
challenge for
that's what
me at
all your
first.
friends told you too, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
True.
it was like, you never like, put your hand on the stove and you get burned,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like you always remember what that feels like. And
Yeah.
so I was probably a little bit slow early on in my career, but then I kind of came to the realization of this. And I always ask my question. I ask if I hire this person, to me, there's two outcomes, right? One is we're going to do more business, right? Or I'm going to get more time back, right? And to me,
Mm-hmm.
either one of those outcomes is okay. Like if I make the same as what I'm doing, right, and I get more of my time back to either work on other stuff, or just spend with my family, I'm cool. Or if I don't get any time back, but we do more business, I'm cool, right? Like that's literally like when I came to that conclusion. And frankly, if I make the wrong decision, right, like then I made the wrong decision, and then that person doesn't work here anymore. Like I used to have this guilt of like when I hire somebody, it's my responsibility to kind of keep them on board, and that's not how like high performers think. Like it's not my responsibility to keep somebody employed if they're not like meeting the standards of like what the job is or what that's not my responsibility. That's their responsibility, right? And like that's the way the world works, right? Like so once I kind of came to those three items,
Yeah.
truthfully, I was like ready to roll. And had I not done that, I literally would still be like a small little operation, and I'd be frustrated today because I wouldn't be able to keep up with my work and service level, and my family would be frustrated because I'd always be working and have no boundaries, and
Mm.
and I wasn't cool with that either. Like
Like
true story.
Totally
leaving the beach,
unfamiliar. Yeah.
like leaving the
Yeah.
beach to do a podcast.
Well, dude, here's the deal. I'll tell you, man. I was on my honeymoon, true story, in Greece, and I literally left the beach and I came back 7 hours later because like I didn't have any help. And my
Yeah,
wife was like,
we've been there.
yeah, and she was like, "This doesn't work." Like, and it didn't. Like that didn't feel good, and like nobody was better for it. Like my clients didn't want me calling them from Greece. I wasn't giving them like the best version of
Mm,
myself, and like so that was like I
mm.
never wanted to go back to that, and that was like a pivotal point for me in terms of all right, we got to make some changes. And so like now my clients whether they call me at 9 p.m. at night on a Saturday or a Sunday, they're getting amazing service. They couldn't be happier, and they're not always talking to me, but they're talking to somebody who absolutely knows all our systems, all our processes, knows what our expectations are, what kind of service levels to be delivered. I'm like, that's really at the end of the day, like the expectation that we're setting with our clients and our partners that like we're on all the time. You might not get me all the time. I try to be as available as I can, but like whether it's me or somebody else, you're getting 5-star service.
Yeah, it's killer, man. And I think a very good lesson that I'll make sure my wife skips this version of the podcast.
It's only an hour.
Um,
It's only an hour.
But I think
yeah,
it's a
well,
great lesson too for realtors that are looking to grow their own teams, right? Like it is a very scary
for
thing
sure,
to make
man.
that first step, and you can't grow and scale without it. And I think after you do that first one and you realize that you can do it, it just becomes so much easier. And clearly you've evidenced that quite well given the size of your team. How many people do you have now?
We have about 30 people on the team, 31.
Yeah.
And it's been and it was bigger than that in 2020 and 2022 when we were doing half our business was refinances. Obviously that's not happening right now, but like the people that we have on our team, every single one of them, like they're awesome because they've been through thousands of transactions, they've been with us for years, and like it's really like some really great people.
Is that
Cool.
staff or does that include LOs?
Everybody, the entire
Cool.
operation, LO, staff, everything. Yep.
I love it.
Now, do you do any coaching? Have you? So Seth and I both are heavily coached. It's certainly I think an investment in yourself and your career. Is that something that you've dove into as well?
Yeah, I spent a lot of money on just learning. Like I certainly don't think I have this whole
Everyone
thing
should.
figured out. I'm
Yeah,
actually in Dan Sullivan's program right now called Strategic Coach.
yeah, yeah.
So I fly out to Chicago every quarter. I've been doing it for a couple of years. I'm always like, if I meet somebody that's really successful and smart, and they tell me they're doing something, like I'm all for it. Like I've been individually coached. I've been in sessions like this. Like I go to seminars. Like I will like if I can be a better version of myself personally or professionally, like I'm all for it. Like to me, if I'm going to spend money on anything, I'm going to spend money
Personal
on like
development.
just being better. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's great. Um, I think it's amazing. Like I would not be where I am today if I did not invest in myself. The amount of
And
money
I
you
love
can
that.
make, like if you think about like your return on investment from like that type of stuff, like it far exceeds putting your money anywhere else.
100%. One of my coaches is a Dan Sullivan uh, disciple,
Yeah.
and it's just great. And I have an individual coach that I meet with once a week. I'm in this like estate planning coaching program with a guy that's in the Dan Sullivan thing. I have another like law practice management coach.
Yeah.
Having people that are better than you,
Yeah.
that have a different angle or view of your blind sides, walk you through things and ask like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Right? Like the people that work for you might not necessarily come up and say, why are you doing that? Like what's the thought behind that? Like, did you think that through? And that's just been invaluable, at least for me. And I know Seth is a big believer in coaching. I think he's Tom Ferry, has some other coaches. Like it's just, you know, something that if you're going to get better, you got to do.
I agree.
Couldn't agree with you
You got
more.
it. Yeah, you got
And
to
you
spend the
said
time
one
with
other
people.
thing that really struck me as something that Seth and I talk about. Like I always say, I want to be the least successful person in every room I walk into, and I want to surround myself with people that are like top of their game and going to push
Talented.
me to be better.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I love talking to people. You know, I've learned more. I'll be honest with you. I've learned more about. I've had more success in my business mimicking and looking at people outside of the mortgage business, frankly. Because
Mm-hmm.
like when I first like when I first got into the mortgage business, like nobody really had success. There was people doing a lot more business, but nobody really had like the team model figured out anywhere, right? And like, but like if I looked at like a financial advising firm, or if I looked at a real estate teams already existed and they were killing it. Like, and so like I, you know, and then I'm a huge reader, love coaching, listen to podcasts, webinars, like anywhere I can just get information and try to figure out a way to like relate it to my business. I do. So like, you know, I'm just, you know, I'm like people like, you know, people are like, oh, I don't want to copy somebody else's. I was like, well, I'm like, why not? Like if it's
Yeah.
working, like, you know, and copy it and make it my own. Like, you know, obviously it has to be authentic to you to kind of be able to pull it off anyways. Right. Cause it's like, but that's why I'm an open book with this stuff. Cause like, if, you know, I can't tell you how many times I have mortgage people or real estate people come up to me and be like, hey, listen to your podcast or webinar. And like, I took this, and this, or I've copied this. Like, I think it's great. Like, you know, what is more fulfilling than that, you know?
They say that imitation is the biggest form of flattery.
Yeah, it's like
That's
if
what
I can make an
they
impact on
say.
somebody I don't even know just by talking about stuff like this, which I thoroughly enjoy anyways, like what's
Same.
cooler than that?
Yeah, no doubt.
You should be
So,
a coach. Do you coach other people?
You know, I've coached other people individually. Been asked a few times, so I've done it as like a courtesy and as you know. But I, you know, I'm so laser focused on like what I'm building. Like I'm also like one of those tunnel vision people that like you know, I just don't want like I'm more into being coached right now and coaching my team than I am coaching other people. Only because like um, I'm on a mission to. I still haven't accomplished you know what I
So
want to
you a
accomplish
Colby?
yet.
You're not a high quick start.
Yeah, a little. No, I am a pretty big. I'm a quick start for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
they
I am a
say
quick start.
you'll make more money coaching your own people anyway, quite
Yeah.
Yeah,
frankly.
100%.
So,
So that's the thing.
you know
Like
what I
I
mean?
always think about like what I could make from that avenue because I get asked literally daily, right? And I look at the return on what I can do with investing back into my partners and my team or whatever. And like you know, maybe someday. Honestly, I do think I'll end up doing that at some point because it is fulfilling for me. I'm just not there yet. You know, I'm just not there yet. I'm
Well, there's your next hire. Hire a head of coaching, and
Yeah.
that
there you
person
go.
can build out the coaching model for you and
Yeah,
potentially take some of the sessions, right? So,
yeah. I
all
got to
right. So
find out who.
you just said a couple cool things, right? So people outside the organization, right? So when you're building your team, I know you talked a little bit about the director of operations who came in and really streamlined processes and knew more about the product or whatever, or the systems than you did. Talk to us a little bit about hiring internal versus external of the industry in effort to try and solve some of these talent gaps. Because I also look a lot outside the industry. Backstory, if you don't know, I spent 16 years at Best Buy, and I
I
climbed
did
my
know.
way
Well, you
through
told
the
me that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I climbed my way through the ranks, and I ended up running Boston, and then I ended up running New York and Connecticut, specifically in a sales capacity. So I have a great network of really good sales coaches, and quite frankly, wouldn't be the salesperson I am today without that company, right? So I always lean back on some of those trainings or some of those people and the who's, and know that they could really kill it in this industry. And I always hesitate a little bit because they don't know the business, right? So talk to us a little bit about kind of what you've done hiring internal versus external and internal in the industry, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, truly, most of my most successful hires on the sales side have been people that have been outside of the industry. You know, like
Hmm.
uh, because of because of that. Like, there's a lot of really good, talented people out there that have way better access to coaching and training and customer service and all that kind of stuff outside of our business than inside of our business. And like, there's certain things that I just couldn't train on that because so like that like so I've had a lot of really great success for people outside the industry. I think what's important is that when you bring them on board, I think having somebody that's like a partner for them internally within the company is huge. That's somebody they can go to, but also having like, you know, just like very much like systems and processes and keep it really, really simple in terms of like, we do a good job, I think, when somebody comes on board, like we start them in one place and then we kind of little by little over the course of a couple of years, like give them more. I'm not looking for them to kind of, for example, like when somebody, first came in, like generally speaking, like we'd put them, maybe we'd make them a sales assistant, right? And teach them the basics of the business, then bring them up into sales and maybe just give them refinances initially where they're just calling our previous clients and just checking in with them. And, maybe allows them the opportunity to like control it at a slower pace, like take information, get off the phone and call them back. Then eventually we put them on purchases. And when we put them on purchases, we give them certain products that, they can sell. And then eventually, like, little by little by little, just keep, as they're building skills, just stack onto those skills. We certainly don't throw them into the fire and be like, hey, go figure it out. Right. Like it's, because that, like, I can't risk one, them being overwhelmed, but two, one of our clients having a really bad experience. And, look, occasionally that's going to happen, right? Like if you and you just got to be involved enough to when you're training somebody to know when that happens to where you kind of know when to take over and then let them listen to you. I think that's a big part of it. So one of the big challenges, I got to be honest with you, I think it's going to happen across our entire, country, not just in the mortgage business or real estate. Like this whole remote work thing is going to make training people a lot harder. I don't care what you say about Zoom, online stuff. Like there's no training that you can have that's as good as that side by side, somebody listening into an office, being surrounded by 5 or 6 other people doing the same exact issues, talking to clients and just like learning as is. Like it is going to water down the experience in certain industries because like, it is the best way to learn. So that's just my opinion. I'm sure there's somebody that's going to listen to this podcast that
I think no,
thinks
I
I'm an
think
idiot.
we're
No, I think we're all going to
no,
agree.
I think we're in agreement that there's a pandemic, pun intended, in and of itself of work from home, whether that's commercial real estate and some rate stuff there and the not needing of office space. But listen, we're in office 5 days a week for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like I completely agree. I want to see these people every day. I want them to hear us in the other cubicle on how we talk to a client. And if someone needs help, they can be like, "Hey, come over here. Can you take this call?"
100%.
And you earn more business that way. And oh, by the way, when done right, man, what a work environment,
Yeah.
right?
It's the best.
A lot of fun. It's a lot of
Yeah.
Well,
fun,
and
right?
promoting the ability to ask for help, right? So, like, if you only meet people on Zoom, you don't build that relationship that you build when you're sitting together and you're like seeing them at the water cooler, at the, microwave when you're doing your lunch. And, you're able to build that rapport that when you do need help, you have a better relationship that you can actually ask for it, right? We're missing out on that. I don't know, culture. The culture of the
Yeah.
organization really suffers, I think, with the Zoom because people can't build authentic relationships.
Yeah. There's just none of the side conversations.
Yeah,
It's like, you finish a Zoom call and you're gone. Like it's over. Like nobody
yeah,
stays and said, like, I can't remember ever having a Zoom call where like the call's over and everybody's like, why don't we hang out and just catch up? Right. Like it
right.
doesn't happen.
Like, tell me
Like,
Yeah,
about your
there's
kids.
yeah,
there's all those memes. Like if you're the person at the end of the call, it's like, hey, anybody have any questions? Like if you ask a question, man, like I'm gonna kill you, right?
yeah,
Everyone's just like end the meeting,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
So,
uh,
it's,
I hear that.
anyways, you know, so but it's, look, I think what we've done is this, and it's been, when we're hiring, I literally, we've gotten better at it. And, this is certainly not the way it was when I first started, but, probably thinking a little bit,
Hiring's
but
hard, man.
hiring's hard. It's you got to find, there's so many things. You got to find the right person. You got to put them in the right position, and you got to make sure they have the capacity to do it, right? And like, and all those things are equally important. But then, I think in terms of determining who we want to hire and when the next hire is right, like we have this tool we use, and so we're constantly writing out like whether with whatever who's doing that position, like what they're really great at and they love doing, what they're really great at, and they like doing, what they don't like to do but they're good at, and what they don't like to do and what they're not good at. And typically, we always hire for the like to do, but like I'm sorry, good at but don't like to do, and not good at don't like to do. Because if we can always find, because then if the perfect situation is find people that love doing and are great at the things that the other people don't like to do and aren't good at, right? Because then you build a well-rounded organization, and then no matter whoever your client is touching or whatever part of the process is, somebody that thoroughly enjoys that and is great at it is going to be touching it. Because like there's certain parts that like of this job that I hate to do or I'm not good at. And like, so if I'm on the phone with that client, like they're
Your
not
best.
getting A+ service. But I have somebody on my team that all the things that I hate to do and I'm not good at, I have somebody that loves it and is great at it. And so the client experience is like extremely different.
Man,
Yeah.
that's a nugget right there.
Yeah.
That's some traction shit. You must have read that book.
It's traction. I'm a huge traction person. Huge traction person.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in 40 minutes. We've covered
Yeah,
a ton of org stuff, kind of leadership stuff, which I thought were some killer nuggets. Cool to just pivot. Let's talk finance, mortgage.
yeah, of
What the hell's
course.
going on, right? Like, so here we are. This is what's cool too, and I agree with you. Not only is work from home a huge problem, but man, I'm looking forward to the fizzle between realtors and loan officers and other people in this business that have just been dogging it, and now they don't know what to do in this really, you know, schizophrenic market. I mean, I've had to get so much sharper just as a realtor in the last, year and a half about what's going on in the market and to track inflation and the jobs report. Like, man, I was just selling houses at one point, right? And it was just cool if I knew what an architectural shingle is. Now you
Yeah,
got to know so much more if you really want to be at the top of your game, right? So, we get some great data with CPI. Inflation comes out, it's at expectations or a little bit better. It's coming down, and I think you and I have talked a lot about independently about how housing is really lagging in this and eventually
yeah,
will fall off and we'll see a huge drop off in inflation. Still waiting for that to happen.
yeah.
But it's going to happen, right?
Definitely
And
gonna
then
happen.
jobs comes out, got crushed finally, right? We're seeing this job, not that we want to see people lose their jobs, of course, but like, you're kind of like, man, finally, like this is working, right? So we get to expect the bond market to react positively. And here
Yep.
we are. I mean, rates are creeping up again, right? And so
Yeah.
talk to us about what's going on economically out there and how is the debt ceiling, factoring in all this stuff. There's so much to talk about.
So, it certainly creates a lot of instability. Obviously, if you look back at the debt ceiling, from what I've read up on it and seen, they've raised it 75 times in the past, right? So this is not like a new
Yeah.
thing where, and it always seems more polarizing every single year. But like, there's been many times where it's been very equally as polarizing. I think everybody keeps pointing back to like 2011 or 2012 is like the most recent example where it like came down to like literally the wire. I hope that doesn't happen. If that happens, I think you'll see the stock market pull back in
Yeah.
reaction to fear. Fortunately, you'll see probably rates actually improve if there's some concern that the debt ceiling is not going to pass, because typically when the stock market sells off, money pours into bonds. Um,
Mm.
there's so much going on in the economy though. Like, if you told me if we were here, like I said, I was in your office in
Yeah.
what was it, February or
Yeah.
March, and like if
Yeah.
if I think it was February probably. If you told me that like in a few months, like Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic Bank were not going to be in business anymore, like they were going to disappear, I would have been
You
like,
call me
what?
crazy.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah. Who's
so,
this
like
joker?
yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like so the Fed always says they're going to raise rates until things break, right? Like that. No, they don't say that, but that's kind of like implied, right? They're going to raise them until things and things
It's
started
kind of
breaking, right?
breaking,
Like
isn't it?
yeah. So you're starting to see unemployment. You're starting to see. I think you're going to start to see, even though the unemployment number is low, it's like 3.4%. There's indicators that there's
Right.
less job listings than there has been in a couple of years. There's more layoffs and furloughs than there has been. I think it's like a 2-year high and a 2-year low for job listings. So like something's happening. If you talk to any
Mm-hmm.
recruiter in any business, some of them are our clients. They'll tell you like, hey, the employers are scaling back. So we do think unemployment's going to go up from like 3.5 to like high fours or 5%. The Fed's kind of come out and said that. If you listen to the Fed chairman when he got interviewed, when he was in front of the Senate, he kind of said like, unfortunately, like you're going to see unemployment go up. It happens every single time in a Fed raising cycle. So like, there's all this like there's a debt ceiling. There's all this economic uncertainty, and with rates,
A lot of noise.
did I think that rates are going to be better in May than they are right now? Like I did. I thought we'd probably be in the high
Same.
fives right now instead of like the mid to high sixes. But I do think it's on its way as inflation comes down, rates come down with it every single time. We think that the inflation number readings are going to continue to get better and better throughout the course of the year. We think we'll probably be in like the high threes in inflation by the fall. So like inflation's come down, I think 9 or 10 months in a row, right? Like it's going on the right way. Housing is the big problem right now. Is that the way housing is calculated, it's 43% of the inflation reading, and it's just finally starting to kind of crest on its way down. And I think you'll start seeing some of the housing numbers improve. I think used car prices were also a big problem in last month's
Yeah.
inflation readings. Like, if you saw the price of how much they increased month over month, that's unsustainable. Like used car prices aren't going up over the next year 50%, right? That's just not going to happen, right?
Right.
Well, I did read something actually about used car prices because of this time 3 years ago. There were no new cars and no one was taking out leases. That there are no lease returns, which are the typical 36
Oh,
month lease, was like leading to the resurgence of the upward pressure on used car prices. I don't know if that has any water to hold, but it
I mean,
made a little bit of sense.
it's logical, right? Like
Yeah.
it's totally logical. But I just, so I mean, I do think rates are on their way down into the fives. I think we're going to be heading into like the mid to high fives. In my opinion, by the end of the summer, I think we'll be at like a 5.5 to 5.75 range. Once we get June, July, and August inflation readings. Obviously, if the debt ceiling doesn't pass, though, right? Like let's just say like they don't raise the ceiling and we go into default, then we could be talking about eight
eight,
and a half.
eight, nine, 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like,
Scary.
I'm hoping that it's like one of those things that like you just hope like doesn't happen, right? Like
It's
because
like
like
when Seth
It
and I
can't happen.
threatened
It
to
can't.
default somebody on a PNS, and it's like we're
They're going to
not
keep your
really
deposit.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it
Yeah.
never really happens. It's like this big bluster that
Yeah.
still
Gets
waiting.
people real riled up
It
though, man. And
does.
do they do what you want, I guess, right? So yeah, listen, I think it was like Zillow came out and said that if and when we default, which we obviously shouldn't, it would be catastrophic. A 23% housing correction chance, and we would see rates at 8 to 9%. And I think some people think that they'll be significantly higher if that happens.
yeah,
The reality is, it just can't happen. To your point, it's happened almost 100 times in the past. Like, listen, the government needs to raise their AMX limit. It's all good.
yeah.
Maybe hopefully there's some compromise in the budget, and we can take some cash out of the budget and maybe start heading in the right direction. But yeah, listen, I've been also calling for rates in the fives, just because I've kept up with what you've been talking about. It was awesome meeting when we had you in the office, and obviously following all this other stuff in the market. And it's just interesting when you finally think you get a grasp on it. It's like goes the other direction. You're like, what? And now we're tracking with other liquidity issues and bonds. I don't know. It's interesting. So,
I'll tell you what
but
I have learned though. The biggest lesson I've learned in terms of economics over the course of the last 12 to 18 months is that supply and demand is everything, right? And
no doubt.
so, like if you told me a year ago, same thing. Like if you told me in January, February last year, hey, guess what's going to happen? Rates are going to double. Rates are going to hover between 6 and 7%, and on top of that, the stock market's going to go down about 20% starting now, like last January. What's your expectation of housing prices? I would have been like, oh well, they're probably going to go
They're
down
going to
like
go
10 or
down.
15%, right? And what I've learned is that it's all about supply and demand, and like and we're gonna. I think personally, home prices are going to be okay. Like I do think we're headed towards a
Yeah.
recession, personally, and I think that home prices will continue to appreciate because there's just going to be a low level of inventory in our country for years and years and years. There's a bunch of people that aren't going to sell their houses because they're sitting on 2 and 3% rates. There's not enough new construction, unfortunately. The state of Massachusetts and the city of Boston isn't like they say they're pro housing, but they're really not. Like they make it really hard on
Don't
developers.
don't
Oh,
get
don't
trending
get me
started.
started. Don't
Yeah,
get me started. My favorite
so
topic.
yeah, so like there's not enough new construction that can happen that will fill inventory, and there's so much demand out there. I mean, the demand for housing, especially with rent prices going up like crazy, pushes people into homeownership, which is ultimately a good thing, right, for them in terms of wealth creation. And on top of that, you've got, the interesting thing is like, the population of 30, 31, 32 year olds, it's the biggest it's ever been. And the average age to buy a house in our country is 33. So we're seeing the biggest population enter their prime home buying years. So like, it's amazing to me that, homes appreciated as much as they did last year are already appreciating this year. It's pretty interesting. So like I think housing. So when everybody hears, like anybody's listening to this call, like you're going to hear recession talk this year. Housing does extremely well in recessions.
No
And
doubt.
so I think that's also like people hear recession, they think housing crisis. They're two different things, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Agreed.
it's so I could talk about this stuff all day. It's like my passion, obviously, you can
Yeah.
tell. So
No, listen, it's killer stuff, and we've been talking about this a lot, right? So to talk about the millennial in the peak home buying year right now, right? And they have more money than ever, they have better credit than ever, and they're paying more in rent than ever. And at the end of the day, they don't care, man. They don't want to
yeah,
pay $600-700 more a month to rent, so they're going to go buy and they'll pay $600-700 more per month, and it's fine.
yeah,
The it's crazy to me how, and I'm sure you saw it in like application volume, but like, man, it's like right after you left our office in that training, February, March, like someone hit a light switch in the market,
Yep.
man, because we just went from like couple offers, you could probably get anything with an inspection and some contingencies to like 2 to 3 weeks, bananas,
yeah,
overnight, double digit offers. I've seen some houses from just other friends, clients, agents across the country, 100+ offers, 300,000 over. And man, like what a flip in the market.
yeah. It started later
Overnight.
than we expected. Frankly, I thought it was going to be busier. I thought January and February would be a little bit busier than it was. But I mean, this is definitely the most intense it's been. And you're right. Like last 6 to 8 weeks, like once we got past President's Day, it turned on, and it has not slowed down. I mean, the application volume on the weekends during the week, the multiple offers, like everything is like, now we're seeing pre-inspections again and waived mortgage
Yeah.
contingencies and like, and stuff, so it's, supply and demand, it's like, I said at the beginning of this call, I went to Bentley College at the time, and I remember Economics 101, and it was like really my favorite class. And it's funny how 20 years later, it's like the only lesson that I took out of that place. I'm applying
The
today.
supply and
That's
demand.
Yeah.
So I was a business major in undergrad, and I must have slept through that class because I don't remember them talking too much about
I
that.
really
But
enjoyed
I
it.
know it now.
Yeah.
I think that class was a really early, like at 8:30 in the morning, like on Fridays, and it was a tough one to get to.
yeah, it's a tough one to get to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. So Sean, selfishly, let's talk about 2 to 3 things that you and your team can provide, right? So like talk to us about Power Bid, talk
Yeah.
to us about, I think it's 24-hour approval. Like it's funny enough, and I don't know if you know this, but you did that meeting. It was a Tuesday because that's when we do our trainings, and I had an offer deadline that day. And one of the pre-approvals came in with your name on it. It was a lower offer, and I was joking with Johnny. I was like, "Sorry guys, you guys aren't getting it. You guys are smoked." The realtor, Caitlin, who I got to give her credit if she's a listener, saw on our Instagram that you were in our office,
I
got
remember
her
this.
client,
Yeah.
got her client over to you guys, who, by the way, was going to close in like 60 days. And I was like, listen, my client's out. He already bought a house. He already moved. And they're like, how about we close in 12 days? And I was like, well, this is a no brainer. And so she pivoted from her existing lender to you guys, and you guys slam dunked it. Same offer, price, right? But the terms mattered, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. Like, to be a savvy agent out there, be like, he must love the Shant guaranteed rate.
She's a
Let's
good
get it
one.
done.
She's a very smart people. Very
I
good.
loved it. Right. So talk about that process, right? Because, and as I've talked about this with other clients, some people say things like, I don't understand it. How is that, why can they do it faster when my mortgage company can't?
Yeah, so it's all about expectations, right? So like, I always say this, and I truly believe this, like you can literally like get a credit card in 30 seconds. You can get a car loan in an hour, you can get a student loan in a day, but for some reason the expectation with a mortgage is that it should take 45 or 60 days. And then when somebody does it in 30 days, they want a pat on the back, right? Like they're like, "Oh, you're the best." Like I'm the best. I did this in 30 days. So, like we've just reverse engineered the process and utilized like we have really good obviously team members that are pros, but like there's really great technology out there today that can help expedite a client applying for the mortgage, collection of data, uh, verification of data through income, credit, and assets. That can take what used to take days or weeks, like literally like seconds and minutes. And we've invested in all of that over the course of time. And so we're combining people and technology. We're not cutting any corners from the quality of the file. And what it's doing is the execution and communication. Now we're spending all the time on what's important. Like we're educating and informing and preparing the client. And so we're doing that, and like we're focused on it. It's like one of speed and certainty are the two things that we talk about every single day to lead to execution. And so we're every business has a company that's trying to change the game and people that are trying to change the game, and we're focused on that right now. And so we close loans regularly. I can't tell you how many deals that we took. I forget that it was like May 1st or 2nd. And we took like a bunch of accepted offers and we closed them all on May 12th. It was like Monday to Friday, and like it was like the market was hot, and like we did them all. And everybody's like, "How can you do this?" I'm like, "Look, just trust me. I got it." Like we'll have the appraisers out to the house like in the next 24 to 48 hours. We in some cases we get appraisal verification waivers. We do a lot of the work up front, which a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Like when we pre-approve somebody, we already start underwriting that file. We put them into power bid. Power bid means every single credit, income, and asset condition is signed off on before a client even makes an offer on a house, right? And that all that's left to do is an appraisal. Well, I can turn around an appraisal and title work. Like we work with Cherry Tree, right? Like you guys are getting us title every single time in 2 weeks and getting your client ready for a closing and like streamline the process. So you have to surround yourself with clients that are willing to communicate with you and do some of the things they need to do up front, prepare in advance, and then really great partners, right? But it's we're focused on it. We know it's a differentiator. My job is not just to provide, like, to me, like the very basic of what I'm doing is provide really great financing, right? So like we want to great terms, rates, communication, all that stuff. But now if I can be a difference maker in terms of like a client actually getting an offer accepted and have their client stand out in a market in which there's multiple offers, a third of which are cash, right? And then the other ones are
Right.
going to waive some sort of financing. If I can be a difference maker in terms of like a client's offer standing out outside of just price, that's really powerful, right? And
Well,
then that leads to like really great brand loyalty from partners and helps us kind of open doors to other relationships. And so I think it's smart business. Is it easy? No,
Yeah, I
but it's
agree.
like totally worth it.
For sure.
Is it worth it? Absolutely.
and I would assume it helps the realtors, right? When you're able to do that
Yeah.
kind of front end work on the qualification of the buyer, it's a lot easier to have confidence saying like, let's waive the mortgage contingency. Like Shant's already told us, we're 9/10 of the way there. It's a pretty safe maneuver at that point.
Look, here's
Versus
how I
some of
look
the
at it.
ones I see, I'm like, oh God, are you sure? Like, did we really just do this?
So like emotionally, right? Like think about like it's really powerful. Like if I can help an end user client, right? Like get their house. Like if I can be a
Mm-hmm.
part of that process with their
No
real
doubt.
estate and be a partner with like their team to help them actually win, that's a big deal, right? It's their life, it's their family, it's their investment, all that stuff. But for a real estate agent, like if I can be a difference maker in terms of like your average real estate agent, if they're having a great career, I think it's closing like one deal a month, right? Or two. Like I don't know what your average real estate agent closes, and obviously there's people that are exceptional that do way more than that. But like if the difference between them is having that one deal every single month or having zero deals, like that's changing the game for them too. If I can be a part of that,
No doubt.
and so like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how we look at it. Is like what are my obstacles and challenges for my clients and my partners, and how can our strengths fill those needs, right? How can I be a solution for them? And like so if a realtor goes from doing like no deals next month to one because like we closed in 10 days or 2 weeks,
It's
like
life
that's a
changing.
game changer.
Yeah,
Sure
that's
is.
killer. That's killer. And I got to give you credit. That's exactly what happened, by the way. Before the PNS was signed, on like a 48-hour turn time, we had the place appraised, and I think it was in at value. And like, sure enough, like everything went great. So kudos. The program works, right? So
Yeah.
we loved it. We loved it.
Yeah.
Sean, another thing that I know that you're really committed to, and I think is so awesome, is veterans and VA lending, and that you're really crushing sort of the VA lending. I know that when Nikki was with you, our team met with her. We have a lawyer on our staff who's a JAG officer, active
Yep.
military guy, and
Yep.
I know that you are just so committed to that population and providing the gift of home ownership to people that have given the ultimate sacrifice for the country. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, as we all should be, right? Like, it's it's the best loan product out there for the people that are so deserving, right? So we just want to make sure, like, they know, like, and it's what's really interesting is like we're doing VA loans for people in all walks of life. People buying $200,000 homes 0% down to people buying $2 million homes with 0% down or even more if they want to. Right? It's an amazing product. It drives me insane when I hear people say, "Oh, I don't want to accept that offer. It's a VA loan." It's like it comes along with like it's hard or whatever. It's like it's really just like not being
Too
aware and not being
expensive.
educated in terms of the benefits of the program. And it's like if there's anybody that we shouldn't be, closing doors for, it's our military who've sacrificed and just want their part of homeownership to get involved in utilizing this program they're truly entitled to uh, for what they've done. So yeah, we're so committed to it. We waive we waive like literally all our lender fees on every single VA loan across the country on every single deal at guaranteed rate, not just on my team. And then we go out of our way to just communicate, educate. And I wish we could do more, frankly. And it's a really amazing program, and we've tried to have a huge array of like every single VA product that's out there and make sure we're communicating to everybody that we do it. It's amazing. And unfortunately, there's some companies out there that kind of try to sound like they're advocates for the VA that really aren't. Like the way they treat them from a pricing standpoint, how they take advantage of kind of like that trust they build through a marketing standpoint. It's really
Mhm.
sad kind of how that happens. So we try to lead with like just doing the right thing by them, not only from a service level standpoint, but also a product and price.
Awesome. You know, being on the other side of a lot of transactions where we're working with the lenders, another place where your team blows everybody else out of the water is on condos, right? So since the Surfside condominium disaster, lenders have really cracked down on condo doc review and sort of budgets and minutes, and your team is so spectacular at understanding these really difficult concepts in these smaller associations and how to get them approved. Like, how did you realize that the industry was moving, and how did you decide to invest so much energy into making sure that you were so good at that?
Yeah, so it's honestly one of the things that I made a decision on early on, and it was like one of those things that, like, back in when we were talking about when I first started in my business, like, I'm 30 years old, or 28 or whatever I was at the time, and like, I was trying to do business, and like when the market collapsed, like condos was one of the first things that got really difficult, and for whatever reason, like I was younger, so a lot of my peer group was buying condos, and like I really decided to go all in on condo back then and become a condo expert. And it was like one of the niches that I had
Smart.
early on. I became like the condo guy, like, and there was so many deals that we ended up saving, and I realized real quick, like, there's so much misinformation and misunderstanding on condos that I really kind of became the person that everybody started calling me on condos in the city. I did a lot of business in Cambridge, Somerville, and Boston, and there it was all condo markets, and I really kind of separated myself early on by really, I was like, my niche was condos. And so like it really helped me build a ton of relationships that led to other things, and and then when this happened again, we went all in. But I have an amazing condo team, and we do business all around the country on condos. We're the preferred lender on many different condo projects. It's still something that a lot of people don't understand and make a lot more complicated than it is, or a lot of people just their service level on it stinks because the communication's so good. Whereas like we're very clear when we can do condos, we're very clear when we can't do them, and we also try to give advice to associations and listing agents of what they need to do to put themselves in a position to become warrantable. And also we understand there's plenty of great products out there for non-warrantable condos. So like we just try to have a full arsenal of like, we try to say yes whenever we can. And we also are very smart about saying no. But there's a lot of things that like, that's something that's like, we're only in like the third or fourth inning of this condo thing because like, fortunately, what tends to happen is the associations all kind of realize that they're devaluing their property if they don't if they
Right.
don't have the widest net of mortgage products that are available to them. So it's crazy to me when associations are like unwilling to make little tiny changes that makes their like opens up their entire association to like all the most popular products out there. And sometimes, fortunately, when you talk to somebody who's reasonable and understands that they need to do the right thing by their 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 entire association and all the people that live there, it usually works. But I love lending on condos, whether they're warrantable or unwarrantable. Whenever we can with the right product set out there.
All right, I think I got one more question. Just backtrack to the VA stuff real quick. Have you heard anything about this buyer agent commission lawsuit?
Buyer agent commission lawsuit. I have not.
So yeah, so not to put you on the spot, of course. There's a class action lawsuit just got greenlit for, and it's in a handful of states. And I honestly don't know a ton of the specifics, but I've been talking about it a lot with my team because it's basically like in the mid
Midwest,
like Central America, right?
Yeah.
And not Central America, but yeah, Midwest, right?
Yeah.
And there's four big MLSs, or sorry, four big real estate companies involved. There's two nationwide MLSs involved, and essentially what the lawsuit is regarding is that sellers should not pay buyer agent compensation. Okay,
I did hear this.
and
Yes, I did hear it.
okay, and so the reason I think that's interesting, and who knows what the outcome will be, but we talked a lot on the last podcast with Scotty Jones from Remax about what that's going to change to the borrower, right? And if you think about a buyer agent compensation hypothetically having to be shifted to the buyer directly, I mean that like immediately hurts the VA product like substantially, right? Because there's a lot of rules
Yeah.
and regs around what they can and can't pay for, right? So like, how do you see that? And I know it's like super new and it's not even real yet, but
Yeah.
how do you think that'll play out specifically? Do you think just like lending regulations will have to change? Like, talk to us on your thoughts a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the VA would probably, if I'm not speaking for the VA, I'm not, obviously, but I think
Of
what they
course,
would
yeah.
have to
Full
do is they'd have
disclosure.
to come out and change their guidelines because, like, the whole point of the 0% down option for them is that, like, they understand, like, the VA kind of looks at it now, like, truly, you can put 0% down and you can get up to 4% of a seller credit, towards your closing costs. So, like, they truly want to make it where, like, somebody comes back from serving, or that if their income's not as much, like, that they can get into homeownership. It, like, creates the door
Right.
for it. So, like, if it becomes to where every single one of their clients has to pay that money out of pocket, like, they'd have to make adjustments to allow that to happen, or else they'd shut their entire client base out.
Crazy.
So
Yeah.
I,
Right.
I
Or
I'd
like,
be,
I mean,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
just don't see that happening. Like, I don't want to,
I don't either.
speak out of turn because, like, I'm not a real estate agent, but, like, I just don't see how, like, buyers are so, we've got buyers are so against, like, having I just don't see them paying for housing and all of a sudden writing a check separately for, whatever the percentage is all of a sudden. Like, I'd be so surprised if that happened. But I mean,
Yeah, I don't think it will either. I think we talked a lot last week about what that might actually look like. And I do think that there's probably some work to be done on the agency disclosure side of things.
yeah,
Like, the reality is most agents that are buyers agents now, if you think about like the Zillow machine that exists, like, oh, my services are free, I get paid by the seller,
yeah,
right? And I don't know if that's the right way to advertise it, right? So, hey, I actually do get paid. And
yeah,
sometimes that means your offer might be looked upon worse because you have an agent or
yeah,
not, right? So listen, I'm not devaluing obviously the buyer agent work. I think it's like we actually have a pretty cool buyer promise that we're putting together to make sure that we execute on this if and when there's some changes. But it's just interesting, and I think like just the way we disclose it today will legally have to be a bit different. And I agree with you. I mean, you can't make a shift like that affect a veteran loan product. Like, it
yeah,
would just be catastrophic, right? So um
Just
okay,
remember,
cool.
the people deciding this will be judges that have never practiced in real estate conveyance, that are, book
Yeah, we'll see,
educated,
man.
and not necessarily, real world experience in the real estate industry. So
You got to think
hopefully,
there'll be enough lobbying to shut it down
we can't
of
really
sorts,
lobby
right? So
judges. That's
no,
illegal.
like I don't know. Listen, you're the attorney here. That's why we keep you on the podcast, I guess. So um okay, anything we didn't touch on that you want to touch on?
we covered everything, man. I mean, there's so much. I've enjoyed this so much. I mean, we hit on such a
Same.
wide variety of topics. The only thing we didn't get into was sports so far. So I'm going to the C's game
Well,
tonight. Hopefully,
let's
we we
there
uh,
you go.
we pull off a nice little game 1 win tonight against the Heat.
That would be great because I was at game 7 with the Bees. I think you were too.
I was there too.
Um,
Brutal, devastating.
that was not cool. I've had
No,
season tickets now almost 20 years, and that one was a stinger. Not as
I
bad
took
as
my kids to
Blues
that
game
game.
7.
What's that?
Not as bad as Blues Game 7 or
No.
Game 6 might have been, or no, it was Game 7 with the cup. Yeah,
You know,
that
it
was
was
a
a good
tough one.
lesson for my kids. I brought my two daughters. They both play ice hockey, and they're 10 and 8. My two oldest, and I think they never even like had the thought
Thought they would
cross their
lose.
mind that like we might not win. Like,
Mm,
so like they're like we lost. I was like, yeah, season's over. Like
Yeah.
it was like so many learning lessons in that. Like, and it was unfortunate. I wish they won, obviously, but
yeah,
it was still
same.
had fun. It was an amazing game until 7 seconds left or 4 seconds left or whatever it was.
Ugh,
But
what a
you know,
stinger.
yeah, stinger. But hopefully we got
I
we got
felt
C still in the game.
that's true. That was and what a dominating Game 7, nonetheless.
Awesome.
Tatum's a stud, breaking a lot
Stud.
of records. You see Doc got whacked right
Doc
away.
got whacked. That's a tough business, that coaching business in the NBA. All the coaching business is
Performance.
a tough business. You know.
Performance based, right? So,
Yeah.
all right. So, Brendan, of course, you got to close us out, right?
Always stuck with me. So we love to end all of these with asking our guests the same question, and that would be if the name of the podcast is The Word. So if you were to distill down your sort of vision for your next 12 months into one word, what would that word be?
Ooh, one word. Uh, Separation.
All
I
right.
think
Ooh,
it's separation season for all the um, all the real people in this business, whether it's in real estate, mortgage, like anything that's in our business. Like the true pros are really going to stand out and grab market share because the value that they're offering to their clients, the advice. I think our clients need us more than ever because they're confused. Is it a fast moving market? Is it a slow moving market? And I think the people that are really going to separate themselves from the pretenders and the pros are going to be the ones that really just add value, uh, communicate their value proposition clearly and actually deliver on it, not just sell it, but like actually do it. Because those are going to be the people that really kind of help their clients, win in this market. And so I think it's separate. I would say separation, but what I mean by that is separation season
I love it.
for the true pros out there.
I
Great.
love it. Yeah, this is we talked about this last week. I think it was very similar. I don't remember what Scotty said, of course, but he said something very similar, and we talked about how now's the time to scale up, right? No doubt. So as people are worried about the market, is where you invest more of your time and more of your energy to show that you are the true expert. So, man, this has been great. Great
Yeah,
podcast.
So
I
good.
really
Thank you
enjoyed it.
for
It was
joining
awesome.
us.
Yeah,
I'll go on record and say this was a top three most interesting for me. So much high level business stuff that I think is fully translatable across all of our fields. Seriously, so
well,
this
I'm
was great.
honored to be in your top three. I thought it was awesome. I'd come
There's
back
only 18
anytime.
episodes, so
I really enjoyed it. So it was awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I was honored.
cool, awesome,
All right. Thanks.
cool. Thanks,
Don't
man.
log off yet, though.